Um, but as Bishop was teaching this on Friday, um, he had put the lesson together years ago, and it was great timing. And I had not spent a lot of time dealing with this directly. Um, but the more I thought about it and the more I was impacted by it, I thought for the folks that are not here, he was teaching a leadership series, but this isn't just for leaders. This is just for everybody who attends a church. And again, this when you attend PI, the purpose of PI is a minister's leadership course, and so that's what he was doing, is teaching that. However, the concepts are still the same, and he was teaching about loyalty versus disloyalty, and it was so good. So humor me tonight for the next, I don't know, 5 hours, but as we yeah humor me as we just kind of summarize some of the things he talked about, and then I'll share some of my own personal things. Is that okay? We've already prayed. Um, Let me begin. The primary definition of loyalty is being faithful to constituted authority. Okay, faithful to persons, ideas, etc., that one is under obligation to defend or support. Disloyal is just the opposite of that. It's the opposite of loyalty. And then there's betrayal, which is probably the best synonym for disloyalty. He includes some names that you may be familiar with: Judas, Absalom, Korah. Anybody have read those names before? With the 10 spies who turned against Moses, all rank at the top of the list of disloyalty. And so when you study each one of those names in your word, you'll find out that there are not only characteristics with those people, there's behaviors with those people. There's also, well, circumstances as a result of some of those people. When someone is disloyal, they never win. Proverbs 25:19, confidence in an unfaithful man in time of trouble is like a broken tooth and a foot out of joint. I have had a broken tooth before, and my tongue finds it nonstop, bugs the fire out of me. That Proverbs, the unfaithful man in time of trouble is like a broken tooth. What's the purpose of a regular tooth that's unbroken? It has a purpose, but a broken tooth doesn't serve its purpose. And so an unfaithful man doesn't serve his purpose or her purpose. Disloyalty. Did you ever think that you potentially could have some of the attributes of disloyalty? I never thought I could. I thought, hey, I could never be disloyal. But, if I'm teaching to anybody tonight, I'm teaching to myself, because it wasn't until that root came out inside of me is really, that's where God began to change me. Sister Donna, who's shaking her head, yeah, because she knows we fight this. So you and I, the purpose of this, and again, when Bishop taught it, the purpose is just to bring an awareness to this. If you're the kind of person that hears this and go, oh God, that's me. Well, is it you, or is it just an attribute that you fight, right? And how do you deal with that? And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. The fear of being insubordinate comes from, the fear of becoming insubordinate. I don't want to be like that. I don't want to do that to pastor. I don't want to do that. And those are good, but you have to realize we're also flesh. We are flesh. Can I get an amen? Who wants those kind of problems? Who wants disloyalty? Who in his right mind wants to see a church kind of ripped apart by a Judas? And Bishop has been around a lot longer than I have, but we have seen some churches affected by disloyalty and church splits. Within the United Pentecostal Church, there's something in the bylaws that if a person within the organization is a licensed minister and they cause a church split, and they take some of those folks with them and start another church, that person loses their license. The person who takes the split loses their license. I would like to say that's the reason right there why it doesn't happen, but it still happens. It still happens. There is no, as Bishop would say, there's no pat answer to the dilemma. We can't completely eliminate it, but there are safeguards that we can do. And one of the things that we can do is continue to pray, continue to teach it, and also identify. There's some identify. I want you to feel safe enough with this guy here that I can approach you and talk about, hey, I detect this, and without being offended. Because that's never the purpose. And I might be wrong. I could be wrong. But at least dialogue is good. Whether we disagree, that's okay. Sometimes we're allowed to disagree. But and again, I'm the kind of guy that we love to preach about submission. Man, those are candy sticks. However, the reality is submission is when you don't agree, but you still do. Right? Let me take it further. I disagree, but I still do, but then I talk about you behind your back. That still happens. It happens. And so that's not really submission. That's just saying, well, I look good to you, Pastor, but over here. I'm not talking about anybody. Don't get nervous. Jesus had disloyal followers, we know. But I love how the master dealt with it. He kissed him. He kissed him. Betray me with a kiss, Judas. But he continued to love them, and he continued to teach the 11, even while there were some conspiracies going on. And so, the success of every church, every local church, will be dependent on the loyalty of its leadership. I can't express that enough because, see, in the secular world, people get paid to do what they do, and depending on what you do or where you work, you get paid very well. But even disloyalty doesn't happen just in the church, but it can happen in the secular world as well. The reality is you've got, from a worldly perspective, your boss will only take up so much time with insubordination before you either get written up or start losing money or get fired. The reality is you're in the church, which is more important than a secular job, which is more important than a salary, right? This is a salvation issue, and I want to be pleasing to the master, right? And I want to be used of him. Disloyalty doesn't happen overnight. It gets in you. It's like a root. It grows. When it was happening to me, and I knew it. And a matter of fact, I started getting despondent. You can see it in the person's face. The countenance, when he talks about countenance, you can see it. I'm looking at somebody's face right now. I can see it. I'm teasing. No. You can see it in their face. They're in this situation, and whether they want to or not, I pray that they don't. But the reality is I'm battling. But it takes somebody that loves you. In this case, it was my wife. She says, hey, you're wrong. Your spirit's wrong. You're wrong. And I remember, and I've told you, many know the story. We were at a conference, and it was preaching. And again, when I got up, there was a pool of tears and snot on the floor. And the person that I was offended against was the pastor, and I wanted to wash his feet because I had changed. And I'd love to say that immediately all the feelings went away after that. The feelings didn't go away immediately, but my attitude was better. My attitude, I'll serve you. I just get my flesh out of the way. Most disloyal leaders never have any desire to become disloyal, but when they do, the disloyal leader is unable to see the error of their ways. Now, that's in the Bible study. I don't know how you get there. When I was being disloyal, I knew I was. I think let me do it like this. I was justified. I was justifying. And even though you may love somebody and they're telling you, hey, you're really wrong. No. I have a right to feel this way. I justify myself. And so that is a part of the problem. So in his Bible study that he shared with us, how disloyalty develops, and the first stage was this: there's a personal ambition. Ambition, zeal, desire are not wrong, but just the opposite is true. However, almost all disloyalty begins where there is a strong personal ambition that gets out of balance. Anybody ever try to diet? Well, here's what I've learned about dieting is, man, if you can discipline yourself for a short time and lose some weight, as soon as you start giving yourself, hey, I'm going to allow myself to cheat, you're already over your diet. You're already over your diet. Because here's the thing, I like the sugar, I like the fats, I like that. I cheat. Now, again, I'm just telling you, if you're not, this is talking about getting out of balance, out of control. It is normal for leaders to be ambitious, but we've got to keep our personal motives in check. Philippians says in 2:21, for all seek their own, not the things which are Jesus Christ's. Say that again. For all seek their own, not the things which are Jesus Christ. We must not allow our own personal desires to discolor our true motives. Our own personal. Let me share this with you. This is something that I see, and this is something that happens. When a person is new into a leadership or a department coordinator, remember, you're in the church, and a department coordinator oversees a department. They oversee that. Their purpose is to oversee that department. It is to make sure that we have scheduled folks. It's make sure that they're trained. It's make sure that if somebody's not going to be here, then they have a replacement for that's their job. That's the responsibility, and then always to try to find their replacement. But what happens sometimes is when I get that position, suddenly I feel like now I can start telling other departments what to do. You're out of bounds. You can't tell other departments what to do. You're a respected person, and as soon as you start doing that, now you start stepping on the toes of the pastor. I'm not afraid to correct that pretty quickly. I'm not, because that is a barrier you don't step over. Well, pastor, I just want to be a help. Then grow your department. Grow that department. Find a replacement for yourself. Again, you're going to work with pastor on that. It's easy to overlook our personal ambition and convince ourselves that we're really spiritually minded. However, when our motives are truly selfless, our desire will be to elevate the purpose of Christ and His church and not ourselves. You're all acting like we did Friday night. It's a little tight in here. Some of you heard it twice. Are you ready? You ready? Listen. If you become easily offended or upset because your pastor does not always accept your idea or suggestions, caution lights should flash in your brain. You are a prime candidate to become a disloyal whatever. Brother Sean's our guest tonight, but I know Brother Sean can take this. I don't have time as a pastor to shake everybody's hand, to call you every day, to check posts on Facebook and Instagram. I don't have time to do that. As a matter of fact, I told my wife, at the end of the week, I will probably be no longer on Facebook. It's a waste of my time. It's a waste of my time. Now, that's a pastor thing. We're still going to have the Apostolic Gospel Church Facebook post, but for Rodney Donahue, it won't exist anymore. I'm getting off of it. It's a waste of my time. I don't spend a lot of time on it, but quite frankly, any time I spend on it is a waste, is what I feel. And we'll just use the Apostolic Gospel Church. Again, we are going places. I preach Sunday. The revival is in front of us. The 800 soul revival that this church has been promised is in front of us. And we've got to have people in place right now. We got to have folks opening the doors right now. We got to have security in the parking lot now. We got to have folks that are willing to go on outreach right now. We got to have people willing to drive the bus right now. We got to have the prayer rooms full right now. Right now. Right now. I promise you this, there is not one person in here that I am mad at. There is not one person I'm upset with. I promise you that. Sometimes I do get a little dissatisfied with some things, but trust me, there's nobody in this room. There's nobody in this room. Be honest with yourself. Discuss your feelings with me. Come and talk. Let's talk about it. Here's what I promise you this, is my first response to you, even if you've made a mistake, is, I love you. Isn't it right? I'll tell you I love you. And then if there's an issue, we'll get into the issue. But for the most part, we're doing good. Okay? But resubmit and recommit your life again. This is not just about you, but this is your family. This is your children, your grandchildren. We've got to reach a lost world. I'm telling you what, the Lord is coming back. I want to be ready right now. I want to be ready. We need to work on our trust together. And no mention, no names, but I told somebody today in a message, hey, let's grab some pizza. Let's grab some pizza. I told them I would buy, but when we get there, I'll make them buy. But no, I'm teasing. No, I said, hey, we've been apart too long. Because if you spend any time with me, the same person here is the same person over there, the same person out there, and I want you to feel like you're a trusted member of this congregation, and a submissive servant. Because we've got so much to do. We've got so much to do. When you're upset, you're not involved. When you're upset, you don't worship. When you're upset, you may not even have a prayer life. I don't know. Why would this guy my title's pastor, it means shepherd, why would I want anybody, any sheep, to be frustrated in their calling? Why would I want anybody to be lost? Why would I not want you to be praying victorious? I'm your biggest fan to get you to pray. I'm the biggest fan to say, come on, let's do this thing together. Let's do this. The second stage that he talked about, and we're trying to hurry. The second stage in the development of a disloyal leader, the secret desire for praise of men. The secret desire. I've taught many times on that, about trying to grab the microphone and being the lead on that. And this is a thing. This is funny to me because, listen, this is how I look at it. The Bible says that if you're invited to the wedding, sit in the back. Sit in the back. Well, Pastor, you want us to sit in the front. Well, that's pastor preference. But no, that's not the principle. The principle is when you come to a wedding, you sit in the back. Then, if you're invited and they bring you to the front, but some of us come in and say, I'm sitting here and so-and-so sitting up there and so-and-so sitting up there. And there's just something about that jealousy and that I got to be a part of that and I got to be a part of that. I'm just telling you, you've got to get over that. You've got to get over that. You got to be... And then what happens is, let's say that Evan's the person I'm hanging out with. You get mad at Evan and he didn't do anything. You write him off. I don't like Evan because, why? Well, I don't really know why I like him. He's just with the pastor. That's why you don't like him. I know that's kind of funny, but that happens. It happens. Let another man praise thee, and not thine own mouth, a stranger, and not thine own lips. And so, we all have basic needs for approval, basic needs to be involved. There's something about this concept of us coming together. There's not too many sports teams. I understand that there's some individuals that for example, I hate to mention names, but sometimes if you got a third string quarterback going in the game, you might be in trouble. I'm not all the chances are you might be in trouble. But the reality, sometimes a person in that lead position is there for a reason. But we all have a need to be involved. Why then would you compromise the opportunity by being involved in the greater good than trying to select a few folks and get your own little group over here and then finding yourself on the outside? I watched that closely. I've seen what that can do. And usually what happens when the little group gets together, there's a whole lot of talking going on. Here's what I suggest, is if you're in your little group and you're talking, pray to God. And if things are being said that goes against your church, that goes against your pastor, goes against your pastor's wife, or just talking incomplete, that's when you say, hey, I'm going to excuse myself right now. I'm just going to love y'all, but I'm just going to, I will tell you. Because I've seen it happen, and it happens. It happens. Don't get caught in that. When a leader starts getting into that situation, and especially in that stage when they're willing to talk and it becomes infectious, it's serious trouble. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time. Because what happens is as I continue to talk and I continue to get bitter and I continue to turn, suddenly that seared spirit starts happening, and then you're going to say the wrong thing to the wrong person, and then they're going to go, Pastor, I think you ought to know. Bishop used an example of a Sunday school. I want to use this example today because this is just an example of how it happens. Watch this. Let's say the pastor notices that some Sunday school teachers have been missing services and are habitually late, even on Sunday mornings when they're supposed to be teaching a class. It just so happens, I'm reading it verbatim, that the teacher who's missed the most is one of the Sunday school director's strongest supporters. When the pastor instructs the Sunday school director to talk to them about being faithful in their commitment or suggests they step down if they can't get the issue resolved, this, of course, now think about it, it threatens the relationship between the Sunday school director and the teacher. So how does you think the Sunday school teacher can get out of that? Well, the praise-seeking Sunday school director says to the teacher, I just want you to know that I personally don't agree with Pastor. However, I'm just passing the message to let you know how Pastor feels. That's rough right there. That's rough. I'm just passing the message. I'm not really going to say anything, but this is just, I really think he's wrong, but, I'm just telling you. That Sunday school director just betrayed the trust of their pastor placed in them. I had spoke to somebody recently about a situation, and they came to me with a concern, and we talked about it, and I basically said, hey, listen, this is just between us. This doesn't affect anybody. This is just between us. It's not going to go anywhere. And I said, I'd appreciate it if you didn't say anything. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely won't say anything. Fast forward, the person didn't know I was standing around the corner, and the person said, hey, Pastor, but don't tell him I told you. And I'm wanting to cry. I'm wanting to cry because you didn't need to disclose that for your protection, for my protection, and for your safety. But yet you went exactly opposite of what I asked you to do. What do you do in that case? What do you do? Not only did the Sunday school director betray the pastor's trust, but now they're sowing a seed of rebellion in a teacher that could be lost. Here's the silent message according to Bishop. Look to me for spiritual care because I'm more concerned about your soul than pastor is. It's how it starts. It's how it starts. It's how it starts. That's who stands at the gate? Absalom. Absalom stands at the gate. I want to stand at the gate where people come in so I can get your ear. Hey, I'm the right answer. I'm the reason. I. As soon as you hear that, that should be a call sign to you that that person, it might be just having some challenges. If they genuinely felt pastor was being unreasonable and not considering extenuating circumstances, of course you can always talk. Now this is where I get to be honest. I make mistakes multiple times a day. I make mistakes. And you're dealing with people. And again, I've talked about this. Past dictates performance. And so there may be something in the past, something that has happened, something that I believe, right, will dictate that. I try to practice grace, try to practice those things that security, modesty, holiness. I try to practice those things, right? But I'm also human, and I do make mistakes. And I'll be the first one to admit it. As a matter of fact, I probably do it more often. Sister Donna, who goes, you don't have to say that. And I feel like as the leader, the buck stops right here. That's how I feel about it. What if you're in a situation right now? And again, I'm paraphrasing his notes, but he says, don't be foolish and think that you would be an exception to the rule. When given an opportunity to betray his pastor, they're talking about Judas, he said that a disloyal leader will always lose out with God. So be honest with yourself. Admit it. Talk it out with God. Go to God. I love what he said. He went to a person and said this. He went to their house and he visited them, and there was a whole kinds of things happened behind the scenes, but he said, the Lord sent me here to tell you that I love you. And would you pray about the voices that are speaking to you about me? And a couple days later, those persons that had listened to that came back and are still in the church today because they were listening to voices. They were listening to voices. Listen, I'm just telling you you're valuable. I'm just telling you you're wanted. I'm just telling you there's a place in the kingdom for you. He died for you. If that doesn't show how much you're loved, I don't have another answer for you, because there's nothing greater than the cross for a lost soul. And so when you, that old song, when he was on the cross, I was on his mind. That's you. And so I don't want you to get into a place where you think that everybody's against you. They're not. But be honest enough with yourself to admit that if you're in this condition, and then here's the hard one. Go to them and say, Sister Amanda, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm coming to you before somebody else comes to you. I'm sorry. I've made a mistake. Here's what I said. Here's who I said it to. Here's their credit card numbers. I mean, But you go to them. You talk to them, right? So what do you do if you are a pastor with a leader at this stage? Well, you're not a pastor in this, but if you have leaders, confront them in love. And sometimes chances are they don't even know it. They don't even know, they don't even realize. So you will not only lose the leader, but chances are you'll also lose everyone they influence. The weaker our personal relationship with God is, the more we will desire praise from men rather than the approval of God. Stage 3 is spiritual pride. Let me talk about that. Spiritual pride. Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. In his Bible study, he talks about, in the book of Luke, chapter 18, and he talks about the parable. Here's what it says. Also, he spoke this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and despised others. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, God, I thank you that I am not like other men, extortioners, unjust, idolaters, or even as this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I pay tithes. I do all this stuff. And the tax collector, standing afar off, would not as much as raise his eye to heaven, but beat his chest, basically saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, again, that the guy that's beating his chest, basically saying, God, be merciful for me, that is the man that God is watching. That is the one who exalts himself shall be humbled. He who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. It was spiritual pride that Jesus came against. Look at me, look what I do. David proclaimed this, the beauty of Israel are slain upon thine high places. How are the mighty fallen? And so within the local church, spiritual pride disguises itself by attempting to be very spiritual and endowed with great wisdom. Say it again. Pride usually disguises itself by attempting to be very spiritual and endowed with great wisdom. They pray more than the pastor does. They start to question pastors' right to tell them how to run the ministry. Spiritual pride will always challenge spiritual authority. Spiritual pride rarely, if ever, stays hidden in the heart. It eventually flaunts itself, it too, because it needs approval of people. And another warning sign is when a leader continually is critical toward their pastor. Always, of course, disguising it as a voice of concern. Several years ago, we had a guest come. If I say, I'm not going to say the name because we're on live, but I'm not going to say, but we had a guest. The guest was interested in one of our new converts. And the person asked to have a meeting with me and showered me with gifts in the meeting. I said, what's all this? Well, I knew you like this and brought all these gifts. And I thought, hey, well, thank you. I'm not, I appreciate it. Oh, no worries. Just wanted to let you know how much we love and appreciate you, Pastor. Oh, man, that's pretty awesome. Come to service. The first couple times things were going well. He says, hey, can I get a meeting with you? Yeah, sure. Hey, Pastor, we have children in this church. I said, we do. He goes, well, you said the word kids across the pulpit, and that's kind of offensive to me. I said, well, that's what I call them, kids. He goes, well, that's a baby goat. They're children. He goes, you should call them children. And I said, well, hey, I just want to let you know that I wasn't trying to be offensive. And he goes, well, it is. Well, wasn't trying to be offensive, but I can't guarantee I'll stop calling them kids because that's what I always call them. I love my kids. So it was a little uncomfortable, right? So it went. The next service, I can't remember what I was preaching about, but I said something about a lady. I said the word lady, or her, or something. It was some kind of pronoun. So I said, sorry, that's in the news today. Some kind of pronoun. But I promise you this. I promise you this, that it was no disrespect. However, he said, hey, Pastor, can I get a meeting with you? After the second meeting, hey, in your sermon you said this, but my fiance is a lady, and I would just appreciate if you just refer to her as a lady and not this or that or this. And so that you weren't in the meeting, but it's simply, hey, Bo, listen, it just might be best that you just go someplace else, because I'm not going to change the way I preach for you, and I'm not trying to be offensive, but if you can't be saved here, go someplace where you can be. Unfortunately, I have experienced rebellion in different people in different ways, and for whatever reason, sometimes people come after not so much me personally, but it's just because they're hurting, and it's the position. And so I have to recognize, right, that you might be hurting or they might be hurting or whatever. So I'm going to practice what Bishop said, and we're going to love folks, right? But here's the bottom line: is if you feel like that through this shepherd you can't be saved, then by all means, please go someplace where you can be saved. Is that okay? Here's the way, because I'd hate for you to be here and stay and be lost and then hate every word I say and hate every song I sing. All right? Go someplace where you can be saved. Stage 4, spiritual blindness. The fourth stage in development of disloyalty is spiritual blindness. Pride and haughtiness will produce spiritual cataracts. The leader can no longer exercise right judgment. Carnal thinking, carnal actions, a competitive spirit now become the motivators behind their endeavors. They have internalized their offenses and they feel that they need to fight back. And so, there's so many things intertwined with this. We teach a message about Jezebel. You never fight Jezebel with Jezebel, right? How did the prophet fight Jezebel? Does anybody know? First of all, God did all the fighting. And when it was time, he basically says, and here's what's going to happen to you, Jezebel, your spirit. I don't even have to lift a finger, but here's what's going to happen to you. And then there needs to be a Jehu that's willing to cut the head off of some things. Reality, this ought to be a soul-saving station. This ought to be a place, again, God allows certain things to come to the surface, right? Does anybody know where hypocrisy? He says he allows it to come to surface so it can be identified. Well, where else are you going to be a hypocrite except for a church, right? Right. It means godless actor. That's what it means. Where else are you going to find a godless actor? In the church. And so it comes to the surface so it can be identified. Now, it's up to the pastor and it's up to the congregation to pray for that person, right? And there's scriptural reference, right? If you ought against your brother, you go to him. If not, then you take a couple more. If they're not going to listen at some point in time, you got to practice. You got to say, hey, we got to set a mark on them. And then turn them over that Satan may do his work that they might be saved. I want everyone saved. I want everybody that I come in contact to be saved. You think this is an easy message to talk about today? This is one of the hardest messages I've ever had to teach. I would much rather let Bishop do it. But the reality is, from a pastor's perspective, I have to back up this message. I have to teach this message and add my own flavor to it, because I want you to understand that when it deals with this disloyalty versus loyalty, I mean, it can happen to anybody. It can happen at any time, and it can happen as a result of different things. Can we cut the sound just for a second? Sorry, sound. If you were here in person, you would hear it, but pastor. Let's talk. Let's have some coffee. Let's work this thing out and let's discuss it. Carnal thinking, carnal actions, competitive spirit. Carnality has strange attraction to like-minded people. I mentioned the groups over here, right? Carnality, when the same groups are getting together over and over, I start worrying. Now, listen, I want folks to have friends and be friends, and I want us to fellowship. I'm not saying anything about that. What I'm saying is when it starts turning into, have you heard the one about Alfred? When it turns into that, stage 5, people follow the disloyal leader. It's amazing. It's amazing to me. I can't grasp this, why people would follow a disloyal leader. Well, they start gaining a following, drawing others to themselves by pointing out the mistakes of their pastor. And it's not long, as soon as I'm saying, did you hear? And they tried to get me sucked into this in grace. Oh, they tried. And then the reality is, and I've told you the story, I was in the prayer room, and I was praying for my pastor, and one of the folks that were responsible for some problems came up and goes, psst, psst, did you hear about pastor? I'm like, no, don't care, don't you know? And about that time, I'm sitting there, and pastor walks around the corner just like this. He just did one of these. I went, oh, God. And here I am. I promise I didn't do anything. I told my wife, she knows I didn't do a thing. But because I was there listening to that right to that second, I felt like I cut my pastor. And that is the worst thing. That is one of the worst things that has ever happened to me, is when he felt like I had betrayed him. I would never do that. But it's not long that this group gets with this group, and this group gets with this group, and this group gets with this group, and suddenly they got a quorum going on. And when you get a quorum, you can vote. Stage 5, people follow the disloyal leader. I already said that, didn't I? The disloyal leader constantly questions the pastor in front of others and hopes to show their weakness. You don't have to show my weakness. Let me go ahead and show it to you. I have a weakness. You know what? Sometimes I get mad. Sometimes I don't see clearly. Sometimes I sing off key. I don't. But sometimes I see something that in my mind is right, but then it takes somebody like my wife to go, hey, you didn't see that correctly. And I love that. And I go, she's right. You know, because your flesh wants to, you know. My brother is a fighter. He's in prison now, but he loves to fight. He doesn't fight now. He doesn't fight. But he would fight at the drop of the hat. I didn't like the fight. I was never a fighter. I was a lover. Just teasing Sister Rose. She's going like this. God. I'm a lover, not a fighter. No, I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight. I don't even like to fight with my wife. We don't fight. And when we do, I win. No. But we get in arguments like everybody else. But I'm just talking about, I don't want to fight. Here's why. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. The disloyal leader constantly questions the pastor. If the pastor was really a man of God, he'd preach more love. I wonder what he does with all of his ties. Well, my ties, they bought me this little box at home, and I have them all color-coded. That's where my ties go. But you're asking me about my tithes. Go ahead and turn it on. pastor, right? Just so happens there are bylaws. As we grow, and I've already talked about this, and Sister Brenda can attest to this, as we grow, this man gets a percentage, and that's how I get paid. But as we grow, I don't need the same percentage at 200 people than we need at 100 people. And so I'll make those changes when we get there, but I got, not only do you got a trustee board, but I got an external board that knows what I make. And then I also go to Delano Shirley and have my taxes done for another form of accountability. Here's why. Because I saw what money can do to a church. And I can see what happens when the pastor, he could be completely honest and completely, no issues, right? But just by the mere fact that you've got your hands in there, you're going, well, hey, no. That's why Sister Bev and Sister Brenda are the only ones that have access to the pastor's cash. Why are you saying this, Pastor? We don't even care. I want you to care, and I want you to know. I want you to know. Because you might have somebody beside you go, well, what is he doing with all that money? And say, well, I'm glad you asked, because he told us what he's doing. And if you were here on service, you would know. Oh, snap. Do you notice the way he looked at me? No! I can't even see you! They didn't see that. I did this. If I looked at you, it might be because you looked beautiful today, or you might look handsome in that suit. Oh, I just turned it on you, didn't I? If there's anybody I'm looking at, it's Marilyn. Because she sticks people with pins in that back row. Not true. Well, there was a day when she did that, but she's not doing it. Do you notice the way that he looked at me? No. We need to get together and have a prayer meeting for the pastor because he needs it. That was the bad way of doing it. That was the bad way. He's like, yeah, let's pray for pastor. Oh, God, pray for the pastor. He's not spiritual. He's using all the money. Oh, God. Did you hear what he said to me? He won't even let me. I know, he wouldn't let me either. What's wrong with them? They only use their daughters. I've heard it. And I'm addressing it. And you don't even want me to snap that one. I've heard it. Ooh, a little tight. Let's pray. Open the windows of heaven and bless them. I pray that you would bless their jobs, bless their homes, bless their health. I pray blessing on their marriage. I pray, God, that you would use them mightily for your kingdom. And that's the same prayer that I pray every day for this church, is I want you to be blessed. Let me address the music. We are looking for piano players. We are looking for drummers. Brother Phil, Brother Evan, how long have we been pushing you guys for drum lessons? Say while? 2 years? Too long. Praise singers. We now have some praise singers that are taking singing lessons. We have some folks that are getting involved. There's things. Here's the thing, is we want to use folks. We want to use folks for not just this. Listen, if you want the microphone, that's the wrong reason for being here. You don't even need to be here. But here, let's say this. If you want to be a worship leader, and I preach this, but if you want to be a worship leader here, lead worship out there so when the time comes. brother and sister gossip, brother disgruntled, sister hypocrite, brother rebellion. Don't let the pastor know. That one gets me right there. I was standing behind the crowd and he said, but don't let pastor know. Surprise. I do. And by the way, I just want to let folks know that when you do say that, the whisper goes miles down the road. The whisper. When you say, don't let pastor know, the whisper goes a lot further than you think. At first, it's silent rebellion. It's hugs, smiles, compliments, handshakes, hugs. But they just ignore the pastor's leadership. Discord by the time is rampant. So these same people now blame the pastor for the lack of God's blessings on the church. Let's talk about that. Because see, Bishop can only talk about what's happened back there. But here, we are a blessed church. We are blessed. It has been prophesied. It has been said. It has been told things are going to happen. I'll tell you, man, yesterday was a success. We had our open house at the daycare. The mayor was here. The principal was here. And we're going to start seeing families. And when they just come in and expect it, one guy was here yesterday, and I didn't get a chance to meet him, but he already said, hey, I'm already signed up. I mean, I'm here. So I'm excited about that. The reality is this is a blessed church. I know some folks are upset because the trim isn't done yet. I know that. I've heard the grumblings. I get it. We wanted to get downstairs done and get it open. And as soon as we do, it's just about ready. We're opening May 27th when it's open. As soon as that's open, phase 2 is now we're going to start getting our trim work done and things like that. Sister Donahue and I are going to Maryville. We're going to Maryville because they have the same color coordination. It's Brother Kenny Carpenter, his church, and we just want to make sure that the doors and the trim and everything is just right. But I promise you this, some of y'all was like, I'm concerned about the daycare in terms of the looks, but how you like me now? It looks good. It looks real good. And you were concerned about the bathrooms, but how do you like us now? I'm just asking you to trust us as we get through the process. This thing's going to be, it's going to look so good. Matter of fact, I hope you don't like this carpet because it's been here since the 80s, right? It's time to replace the carpet. Listen, if you want it, you can take it home and put it in your living room if you really want it, or your garage. But it's time to replace the carpet and things like that. Anyway, boy, if I had disgruntled, now I do. But the same people that blame the pastor for lack of God's blessing on the church, the disloyal points out, but if the pastor was a capable leader, the church would be growing much more than it is. Hey, there's nothing more disappointing. In the first 5 years, we baptized over 400. Things have slowed down. What has changed? The preaching hasn't, right? The preaching hasn't. We just can't get comfortable sitting here on these pews. We've still got to get out. We still got to reach. We still got to go, right? Proverbs 6:19 says, a false witness who speaks lies and one who sows discord among brethren. For every appointed leader needs to understand that sowing discord is one of the 7 things that God said is an abomination. Right? Is an abomination. Guess how many of those 7 things are with the tongue? Huh? No. 4. 4 of the 7 abominations involve the tongue. And God hates it. Number 6, self-deception. Next comes self-deception. And here they are. If I wasn't right, all of these people wouldn't agree with me. We've seen that before. We've seen that. It's ugly. I'm the only one trying to help the church, isn't it just obvious that I'm much wiser and spiritual than everybody else and the pastor? Isn't it obvious? You might be more wiser than me. I'll give that to you. There's a weakness of mine. I'm not a smart guy by any means. So you might have more wisdom. But the difference is that God has called me here. There's the difference. God has called me. I'm only trying to help the church. I have more experience. I have this. I have that. And again, it's just self-justification. I'm trying to justify why, right? For if a man thinketh himself to be something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. And finally, number 7, and again, Bishop took 3 hours. Was it 3 hours? 7, 8, 9, 10? 3 hours? Yep. Yeah, 3 hours. He covered this in 3 hours. I've done this in less than an hour. So just, yeah. I've done this less than an hour. But it's good stuff. The final stage of a disloyal leader is what he calls the matrix complex. It's basically becoming a martyr for the cause. The pastor realizes someone is betraying his confidence, but isn't sure who it is. He knows, however, something has to be done, so a meeting is called and the battle lines are drawn. There never needs to be battle lines. There never needs to be battle lines. Never needs to be battle lines. Somebody isn't going to make it when battle lines are drawn. It's not going to be good. So, what can Brother Joe, I'm not picking on you. What do I do instead of having a battle? Huh? Well, what would you do? Huh? Say it loud. Yep. Yeah. It's good. That's good. Bishop puts this in his notes. He says experience has taught him that when a person reaches that point of martyr, in other words, I'm willing to die on this hill for it, their conscience is already seared, and they're void of conviction, void of reason. And talking to them is just like talking to a wall. And so they've already decided that they're going to be a martyr for the cause. Disloyalty becomes an act of spiritual suicide, and God never honors that. Many people have been destroyed because of deception of disloyal leaders. Churches have been ripped apart for generations, and revival has been stopped because of Korahs and Judas that were allowed to do the devil's work. Disloyalty never produces a victor, only victims. And when you think about this, Paul talks about the church, when he compares a marriage, a husband and wife, man shall leave mother and father and shall cling to his wife, and they two shall become one flesh. Right? As long as they maintain that one flesh, right? They have for the rest of their lives, right? Or until someone passes. So when he compares that to the church, think about how a divorce occurs. How does a divorce occur? Sometimes because there's no longer one flesh involved. So if I practice simple biblical principles, how to be the best saint I can be, how to be the best husband, wife I can be, how to be the best mother, father I can be. I pray, I seek God, I fast, I submit, I read His Word. I'm doing these things. These things will help solidify you and I so that we are the best that God wants us to be. Can I get an amen? Somebody's phone. So then he finished with this. He said, hey, this class isn't meant to be negative. He said, there's hope. He said, you and I don't have to become disloyal if, with an honest and humble heart, we will continually and prayerfully check our own motives in the fear of God. First and foremost, submit yourself to God, submit yourself to your pastor, submit yourself to leadership, submit yourself to your spouse, and allow them to have veto power if there's warning signs. Sister Donahue has veto power for me. I'm her pastor, right? But the highest calling for her is not that I'm her pastor. The highest calling I have is her husband or a father. That's really the highest calling, a father, husband, and then it's pastor. So when she comes to me, it's husband and wife, and we're talking. And yes, I'm her pastor. But, the love of a father, but the trickery of a preacher sometimes comes out. James 5:16, confess your trespasses to one another and pray for one another that you may be healed. The effective, fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. So how can you prevent disloyalty? Well, let me just close it with this. This is a fantastic church, a loving, amazing church. It has been for 10 years, and we're excited. And God, if God would tarry, we want another 10 years. You have been kind to my kids. You have been kind to my wife. You have loved my son. That is just a loving church, and I appreciate that. I'm just asking you to continue to be those things to us, this family, as we navigate this next season. Right? We're 10 years. We're celebrating 10 years, and it's our goal to continue. I expect bigger and better things out of AGC. The cooks are here. I'm expecting great things out of Tiffin. I see it's already happening. There's great things, and I won't get into that, but there's already great things. We'll let him tell you all that. But spending the quality time with you guys, we need to do that. And I've heard several people say, well, Pastor, you're so busy. Well, I am, but not at the expense of losing somebody. Okay? Set aside, set some time aside. I'm here. Call me. We'll meet. If you want to talk about these stages of disloyalty, and say, try this one. Bishop did this with us with his leadership. He came and he talked about some of the traits, and he says, I'm going to now ask you some hard questions. When is the last time you didn't pray? When is the last time you did this? When's the last time you did this? You're talking to the bishop, right? These are hard questions that if you're looking to align yourself with a leader, with your pastor, don't be afraid of the hard questions. And then finally with this, we'll talk about the dangers of being in leadership. It just so happens that whenever you start getting used in leadership, there will be an increase in a spiritual attack. Does anybody want to say amen to that one? So if I try to put somebody in a position too soon, I'm just setting them up for failure, because the attacks are rough. The attacks are rough. Okay? It rarely is it ever wise to appoint newly converted disciples to positions of leadership. Okay? And then finally, we have some folks who, as we bring new babies in, right? as new babies come in, we want to put them in places like greeters and things like that as they begin to mature and get involved. Nothing wrong with being a greeter, but as we grow, right, be challenging to put a brand new baby involved in pulpit ministry or Sunday school. Okay. Any questions? He finished with reading a letter, which I'm not going to read, but if you want to see it, it's called Conquering the Crucible of Betrayal. If you want to hear more about that, I'd be more than happy to share that. But is there anything else from the lesson that we talked about that's just any questions tonight? Anybody want to ask? Sister Jean? Yeah, not at all. Sure. 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 Uh, Again, I think that I have an open door policy. We are the door is open to come and ask questions. Absolutely, love to do that. Sometimes in forums like this, um, there's some things that we can talk about. Other things I think is probably a better sometimes mano a mano, one on one, where we could talk about things. But there's an open door policy so we can talk. I think dialogue is great. Dialogue is wonderful. Yeah, yeah.
A couple things as I was listening to him speak when he said, if you don't like how I pastor or our music or whatever, go somewhere to be saved. I plead with you, do not take on that attitude. Because if you're not happy here, it's not the pastor, it's not the music, it's you. And you'll go somewhere else and it'll happen there. And what my concern is, this is not Sister Donahue going, you're hurting my feelings. This is me pleading for your soul. Tonight, when I was over here, I was pleading for people's souls tonight. I've been where you're at. I've been on the other side. I didn't like how things were being done. But I had to die and die and die and die. And when I say die, I mean on an altar. That's what the altar's for us to lay ourselves down on it and die out to the way that we think. Peter, he said, get thee behind me, Satan. Because Peter said, wait, I don't want you to die. No. That's not my will. That's not how this should all shake down. I mean, like, no. You're not to die. You're to save us from Roman rule. We're to get our way. We're to win. And Jesus looked at him and he said, get thee behind me, Satan. See, Peter didn't like God's plan. It was God in the flesh. And God said, get out of my way then. Even the disciples didn't like the way that God was doing things. And so I plead with you for the sake of your soul. I've been mistreated by authority. I'm telling you, I'll never forget it. There was a situation where my child and I were being mistreated. It was legitimate. I was justified. And I remember going up. He looked right at, I was so mad. And I looked at him and I said, it's not right. This is not fair. And he said, your spirit is wrong. He said, you're becoming them. And I wanted to leave. I wanted to flee the situation. And when I'm upset, I start cleaning. I start organizing. And so I went up to my bathroom. I started cleaning. And I was just crying. I was like, God, you see this? Like, what? Like, this is not right. This is not fair. They're winning. They know they're winning. And God, I'm telling you, God's my witness. The Holy Ghost spoke to me. He said, do you want to win? And I said, yes, I do. He said, then win in my eyes. Win my way. And I remember at church camp, I was going to go pray for that poor person. God asked me to go pray for him. It was the summer when Brother Mangan was there. The power went out. Pastor's up there fanning him with the pizza box. And Brother Mangan said, I want you to pray right now with the light, because since the lights are out, he said, I want you to beseech God, beckon God for who you can go minister to or who you can go pray with. I was like, oh God, who's it going to be? Like, And he was like, bam. And I was like, I'm not going to that person. And God said, I want you to go pray for this person. I started heading down the church camp, one of those long aisles, and it's slanted. My feet were sliding into my shoes. I was like, okay, I can't go because it hurts. No, I said, God, this is humiliating. And he said, that's what I'm trying to teach you, is humility. And when I did that, that person who never says anything nice or never had hardly at all, looked at me and said, Sister Donahue, do you know that you and your husband are some of the most humble people that I know? What did God just tell me he was teaching me? I'm just begging you, stay in the fire. Let God change you. Go lay on that altar. Let him burn out of you what he's got to burn out. I'm just telling you. Let him burn out. Let him deliver you of yourself. And I could never change that person, but I say, God, change me. Change me then. If I can't change them, then change me. And it's the same thing here. If you don't like the way I do something, I can't change you. I can love you, but I can invite you to an altar where you can be changed. Well, what did Jesus do when they came against him? He opened not his mouth. Let me say this. The situation that was with me, am I being recorded? Can we turn that off? It was injustice.